What's going on, everybody? As always, I thank you for watching my videos. So here I have the iPad Pro. It is the M4 edition, the brand new one, 2024. It's a 13-inch screen with the tandem OLED screen. The device I'm recording this video might not do justice as to the way these photos look. These are my photos that I've taken throughout the years, and one of the key selling points of this device, the M4 edition, because I do have an M1, I still own it, and that has mini LED, which for photo editing, video editing, it does a great job in its own right. Watching movies, stuff like that. The problem with the M1 and the mini LED, and I believe it's also affected the M2 iPad Pros, there's blooming. So, for example, and once again, the contrast is a lot different on my actual device than it is on the recording. But you will get blooming. So, okay, here we go. You have a black border on each side of this photo. On the M1, you would see some bleeding. You would see white light bleeding into this dark border, and it would also be more of a gray than true black border. And that is what this tandem OLED is capable of doing. It also goes really bright, 1600 nits, I believe. So if I'm watching or viewing a photo in HDR, because there are some cameras like the iPhones and the Samsung cameras, mobile phones that is, they will take photos in HDR. So you can watch HDR video or even view HDR photos, and you will see the brightness on this screen. And if you're watching SDR content, the brightness will also make the image or video pop a little more than it would with the older mini LED. So let me lower this just a bit for the camera that I'm using and try to get as close to what it actually looks like. So having these iPads, yeah, they are a luxury item. You don't necessarily need them. There are professionals who will code with them, or better yet, use it in conjunction with, let's say, a full-blown laptop or a computer. As a photographer, I can use Lightroom on this device and just simply use Lightroom on the iPad and never touch the desktop version. And I have. I've been using mobile Lightroom for many years, and it has gotten better and better. And I also edit with via LumaFusion. I edit videos, and on GarageBand, I'll make a few tunes here and there as intros to my podcast, or just, fart around with some of the samples that are pre-installed and make a little tune to be in the background of some of my videos. So that's what I've been doing with the iPad. Not just the Pro, but the iPad Air 2. I've had the very first iPad, as a matter of fact. And then I bought the iPad Air 2. I waited that long in between. My son still uses that in college. He still draws on Procreate. And it still works. It still works with the pencil, the very first Apple Pencil. So Apple does know how to make hardware, And of course, they know how to make software. And that's what makes the iPad platform so intriguing. It's a device that can be easily replaced by your mobile phone. Or if you're home, you could just simply use a laptop or an iMac. But there is something about it that is extremely useful. It's almost as if you don't realize you would like one until you try one. And that's essentially what happened with me. I saw the very first iPad and I've been using them ever since. So I use it, once again, for video production, photo editing, music. I record my podcast on the iPad. And then, of course, entertainment. We watch movies on this. When my wife and I, when we travel, for example, in the Philippines, the M1 iPad Pro was my full-blown computer. I was editing my photos. I was watching movies. I was editing movies. It was doing everything, and it did it with flying colors, or with flying colors, however you say it. But the thing is, the crazy thing is, it's not necessarily, let me rephrase that. You don't necessarily need the iPad Pro to do all that, to do everything I just said. There are applications that will push the limits of the M4 iPad Pro. But they're very few right now. And a lot of people are hoping that, Apple's WGC, I believe, that hopefully they announce something. Maybe make the iPad Pro some type of hybrid computer. But the thing is, there are so many platforms that Apple creates. It all starts with the iPhone. You're not going to make an iPhone that is close in size to the iPad mini. And you're not going to make an iPad smaller than the iPad mini, because now you're getting into iPhone territory. With the iPad, they can go 13 inches. That's what she said. And you're in iPad Air territory at that point. I mean, excuse me. And this is the problem with Apple. You can mix things up really quickly. MacBook Air territory. So if you were to buy the keyboard, the smart keyboard that costs for the 13-inch iPad Pro, it costs $350. That is an insane amount of money for an accessory. But as someone who owns the smart keyboard for the M1 iPad Pro, the 13-inch, I can honestly say that keyboard in itself is a work of art. And after, 2 years of using it, the magnets are as strong as ever. The hinges are as strong as ever. I have the white one. It gets a little dirty. You wipe the shit off and you're good to go. And then if you don't want to use the keyboard, you pop the iPad off, the magnets, and you go on your merry way. So the new Magic Keyboard has aluminum, whereas the older one has a rubbery material, and it's $350. It's a lot of money. But once again, it's one of those things where you have to try it in order to see what it's all about. I can sit here and try to talk you into it. But the iPad, the smart keyboard, all of that, you have to experience it on your own. And then you will get it. So, honestly, as someone who creates content, This is my content creation machine. I rarely use the 27-inch iMac that I have with 5K display. I rarely use it because the iPad is so accessible. I edit photos on my iPhone 14 Pro Max or whatever they call it. I edit photos there too. But that's when I'm out and about and I capture an image that I really wasn't expecting to capture, and I'll edit through Lightroom. But when I know I'm going to go out and do street photography, or I'm out and about in a different country, the iPad Pro goes with me. And I can sit down at a coffee shop and do all the work I need. And if I want to, I can watch YouTube videos or listen to music. Now, the speakers on this iPad Pro, they sound really good. There's a different sound because this iPad Pro is really thin. It is significantly noticeable when you pick it up. It's lighter than the M1 that I own. And so it allows you to use this device a little more casually. Whereas, and I say casually because you don't need a keyboard. You don't need a little stand to help you with the weight. I can actually hold this iPad with one hand and write with the other, even though it's a 13-inch iPad Pro. So it's little things like that that sold me on the iPad Pro, on this M4 model. Of course, the fact that it's an M4 is the first device by Apple to have this new M4 chip. And people are hoping that there's some AI features coming along the way really soon. And because of that, the iPad Pro, this one right here, the M4, could be the device that they demonstrate these AI features. So it's going to be interesting. The same thing happened when I bought the M1 iPad Pro. People were saying, well, let's wait till GDC or whatever it's called. Let's wait. Let's see what Apple's going to do. Let's see if they make this iPad Pro, if Apple's going to make it feel more like a laptop. Well, that's the problem. I said before that Apple creates for different platforms. Well, they also have a laptop, the MacBook Air, the MacBook Pro, and Apple's not going to sacrifice the sales of the MacBook Pro, which is used by a lot of professionals, professionals in the creative market. They're not going to sacrifice that. And those professionals also don't want to sacrifice a real operating system, desktop operating system, just so they can have a portable tablet to do work. They'd rather have a full-blown desktop with a big screen, and they can do all the work they need with the proper power and everything. The iPad Pro, as it is right now, is a great companion. And for someone like me, it is a tool that I can use to replace my iMac. But I am not a true power user. Which, when I say that out loud, you have to wonder why the hell spend the money on the iPad Pro if you're not a power user. Some of you might also be saying that I am a power user because I edit video, music, podcasts, photography. I also do a lot of writing and documents. For example, we put an offer to a home and I had to write on the fly. I got the email, did our signatures on the road, and it was just something that worked. And by the way, this Apple Pencil Pro, because, Apple needs to sell you something else, and that is a negative for me when it comes to this brand new M4 iPad Pro. It's the fact that in order to use the brand new smart keyboard, you can only use it on this iPad Pro. The same applies for this iPad Pro Pencil. You could use it on the 11-inch and the 13-inch iPad Pro. Why? Because now the camera sits up here instead of over here to the left side. And because of that, they had to rearrange magnets. And so when you dock the pencil up here to recharge, you're dealing with a different layout when it comes to the magnets. The same is supposedly the same applies to the magnets in the back. And that's why you cannot use the old keyboards. That is a typical Apple move. And as someone who really likes the Apple brand, as a matter of fact, I own Apple stock, not a shit ton like Warren Buffett, but that's how much I enjoy the Apple product. I have the, Apple Watch Ultra. I have the the Apple AirBuds, the third generation or whatever. And then I have the Air Max, whatever the hell, the bigger headphones. So I like my Apple products. I really do. And there's a reason for that. The ecosystem, when it comes to communicating between devices, it is freaking flawless. It is. And when these devices, for example, I have a Note 20 Ultra. In order for me to get an update, I need to wait for all of the other Android devices to get their updates. And then Samsung will decide when the Note 20 Ultra will get its update and what features they're not going to put in from those updates that another manufacturer might get. Whereas with Apple, if your device is not ancient, chances are that device is going to get updates and it's going to run really smooth. Because iOS, which is basically what this iPad operating system is not a heavy, power-hungry operating system. So everything runs smooth. Apps look better. They operate better on an Apple device. And that's not me just saying that. I own an Android and I own an Apple phone. And there really is a difference when you see how smoothly or how much support a third-party app gets on an Apple device. It's almost unfair. And that's because Android, you have to deal with many manufacturers and an insane amount of different type of Android phones. You have powerful Android phones, and then you have freaking Android phones that have no more power than a freaking old Swatch watch. So for Android and app developers, they have to try to find that medium for a shit ton of phones. Whereas Apple, they control their ecosystem, their hardware, and that is why everything just freaking works. It is not perfect, but it works. And the same thing applies to this iPad Pro, this M4. It is not perfect, but for what I do, it's very close to perfect. What I would have liked was that I can use the smart keyboard that I already own that cost $350 when I bought it, that I can use that fucking keyboard on this brand new M4 iPad Pro, but I can't. That is my biggest complaint. And unfortunately, you deal with it or you move on to something else. That's just the way it goes. And because I am a consumer and I control where I spend my money, that's how I choose to spend my money. I'm not going to buy the Apple keyboard in the near future. I'm not going to say I'm never going to buy it because I said I wasn't going to buy the last one. Well, yeah, the last version that works on my M1. That is my biggest pet peeve about this brand new iPad. Other than that, I get at least 10 hours of battery life. I get a beautiful screen that is freaking bright. The colors are vibrant. The dark screens are deep. So if there's a scene with, let's say in the sky, the scene in the stars, it's not going to look grayish like my M1 iPad Pro. It's going to be completely black. And you notice the difference immediately when you see an older model like the M2 iPad Pro or the M1 iPad Pro using the mini LED. You will see the difference. Not that the mini LED didn't provide a great display in its own right. It does. It absolutely does. But when you see it side by side next to this tandem OLED, you will see the difference right away. Some reviewers say they don't see much of a difference. I can. Maybe it's my brain injury and maybe I can see certain things now. Too bad I can't speak a different language. Anyway, I'm going off topic. But yeah, overall, do I recommend this iPad Pro to someone who owns an M1 or an M2? If you have the money and you are willing to trade in one of those devices, I would absolutely recommend it. For example, for my M1, I can get about $550 towards a brand new iPad Pro. I decided to keep it and hand it down to my son because, as I stated, he draws a lot, so he can use the better pencil, and he'll have the mini LED screen to get deeper colors instead of using that old iPad Air 2. And he'll have the smart keyboard, so he can use it alongside his MacBook Pro. It's an older model. Now that he's graduating next week and he begins his career, maybe he upgrades and he says, you know what, I'm getting myself an M4 iPad Pro instead. Who knows? But regardless, if he doesn't want it, he can use it as a trade-in. Or I'll keep it, use the keyboard with the M1, and now I have two iPads that will be used in different ways. This M4 is going to be used essentially as my desktop. I'm going to edit all my photos, all my videos, podcasts. I use it to record podcasts. And of course, with this tandem LED, I'm going to be able to watch HDR content in a different way. It truly is a good experience because I don't have one of these fancy OLED TVs. I have a newer Sony Bravia that has 120 hertz and the display looks great. My video games look great, but I never experienced OLED until I saw it on an iPad. On an iPhone. And then I saw this iPad Pro and I'm like, holy crap. So that's different. That's different for me. it's a new experience watching HDR content on a freaking tandem OLED screen. And once again, my wife and I, we travel a lot, and the iPad Pro has been the ultimate companion throughout our travels. And we watch a lot of freaking movies, TV shows when we're out and about, and we finally get back from doing whatever the hell we were doing throughout the day, and we relax, watch something on TV. Well, in this case, the iPad Pro, so on and so on. And we listen to music, and the speakers, even on the M1, sound great. So yeah, once again, these are all older, quote unquote, street photos that I've taken with various cameras. Either it was an old Nikon, an older Fuji like the X-T2 or the X Pro 1, even the GFX 50R, and or the Leica Q2. So they look, I'm going to sound like a big fanboy and a major cheerleader here, but the photos do have an extra, a little bit of oomph that it didn't have before with this new tandem OLED screen. So overall, the screen, the display, was one of its biggest selling points for me. And then everything else, especially the M chip, was a close second, or maybe 1B. And then the thinness, the weight reduction, and the fact that you still have the same battery as the M2 and the M1, those were added extras that sold me on this 2024 M4 iMac Pro. So I'm going to wrap it up. I know I've been long-winded. Let me know in the comments if you own an iPad Pro, the new one, or you can easily say that I'm crazy for spending the money. By the way, there's the Apple Pencil Pro. I didn't even talk about this. I'm not an artist like my son is, but the latency, and not that the older Apple Pencils were bad. It isn't, but you have haptic feedback on this, which is crazy. And when I'm writing my documents and I'm signing stuff, it is pretty smooth. It is. It's one of those, once again, you have to try it out for yourself in order to really see or feel what I'm talking about. So anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. I, as always, appreciate that you guys watch my videos. I'll talk to you guys later. Take care.